Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Darren Till versus Chalmers fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content. Maybe you might want me to talk about the main event on this card, of course, being Conor Tierney versus Rico Franco for the World Interim welterweight BKFC title. Again, I could speak about that if you request it through the Patreon, or any other fights that's combat sporting related. And of course, the link will be in the description. I appreciate all the support in which I've had with it so far, and I'm really excited for this fight. To be fair, I'm excited for the event. I'm going to be there doing interviews at the presser and at the actual fight itself. I'm going to be there ringside, and it's going to be really exciting. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how Darren Till does transitioning into BKFC. I think Aaron Chalmers is a good first test for him in BKFC, and if he can get through that, which I'm sure people are expecting, then he'll be a real threat in BKFC to go on to some big things, and could be a lead UK name in BKFC, which I feel will be very exciting. And I feel like the UK are kind of missing out on, to an extent, one of the bigger UFC British names, or just big influencer British names who are big enough to headline. Well, obviously he's not headlining, but is big enough to headline shows and to bring that hype over to BKFC in England. I mean, BKB have been putting on some big events, sometimes in England, and they've been bringing some quite big numbers. And BKFC have done a couple in the UK, but again, with Darren Till, they can really progress and move things along well, especially if he is able to win. If not, I mean, Aaron Chalmers has a big following as well, so there definitely is a market there for both of these guys to go on to big things in BKFC and to start to actually main event shows themselves if they win this fight, whoever wins this one. But I would say it's a bit of a unexpected move for Till to go to BKFC. I mean, he was pushed heavily by Misfits Boxing, and he did start to become the face of the company at one point. I mean, Andrew Tate fought, and that was him kind of being the face of the company for a little bit of time until he lost. But then before that, you had your KSIs, who was the clear face and brand of the company. But that when KSI basically retired from boxing and said he didn't really want to do it after the Tommy Fury fight, then they were kind of left in a bit of a void where they didn't have a lead star name, and they were trying to make these shows sell without one. But then Darren Till became that star name for a bit, and he fought Anthony Taylor. Of course, that was meant to be Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury just stopped fighting for a while now. Obviously, he's returned with Misfits, but now he's fighting a weird fight instead of fighting Darren Till, in which was the fight which everybody wanted to see in Misfits. But then, of course, he headlined versus Darren Stewart, and he headlined against Luke Rockhold as well. So again, he really did become a good face of the Misfits brand for a while, and I think he went on a run even at times. At least I think that Darren Stewart to Luke Rockhold time was him fighting in back-to-back Misfits main events. Again, I might be wrong, but I think that was the case. So again, for Misfits to lose him as a name is very big for them. I mean, he might be able to go back and fight with them again. I am not really too sure how his BKFC deal works. I know it's a free fight deal, but typically I don't think BKFC are too uptight about their contracts and deals with fighters. I mean, I know Mike Perry has jumped back and forth, but I don't know how his deal works. Same with Jeremy Stevens, jumping back and forth between the UFC. So again, I don't necessarily know, especially with these big, UFC stars. I mean, Andrei Arlovsky fought in Misfits as well. How things will go with them jumping about, but they might have actually got down a big deal with Darren Till to stay with BKFC, at least, like I say, for 3 fights. And I would say that, he might not have the big enough names for him to go up against, but I would say at the same time that Misfits, again, were struggling to get big enough names for him to fight on a stage. I mean, obviously that Tommy Fury fight would have been a good fight, and it's a shame that Tommy Fury just basically pussied out of it. But again, BKFC, you're not going to get any fighter pussy out of a fight. But again, are the names big enough? I mean, Chalmers, with his social media following and with the fact he's fought Mayweather and has, come on a decent run in BKFC, that sells as a first fight. But then you look past that, unless he can get a fight with Mike Perry, which he might be able to do. That would be a good fight. Be probably moving Mike Perry up a bit in weight. Otherwise, I mean, you've got the actual champion in Lorenzo Hunt, who would be, definitely an interesting fight for sure. But other than that, you kind of are hoping that more fighters would then come on to BKFC to then create the hype to fight Darren Till, which, again, Darren Till I think has struggled since leaving the UFC to get the big fights and to get the big names to want to fight him, because he is a big risk. He's a big name, but he's a big risk as well. I mean, he's been calling out Jake Paul for a long time. It seemed close at one point that he was going to fight Andrew Tate. Obviously, that didn't happen. He was going after KSI for a bit. Of course, he was meant to fight Tommy Fury. Any of these big influencer names just haven't really wanted to risk themselves against Darren Till, because yes, he is a big name, but he probably isn't big enough name to really risk everything like that, especially for somebody like a Jake Paul, who obviously has just fought Anthony Joshua and is possibly in talks now to fight somebody like a Francis Ngannou. You would say that fight is bigger than a Darren Till fight, really. So I think he's just in the out kind of skirts of the influencer scene and nobody really wants to welcome him in, which again, like I say, makes it harder for the bigger matchups to happen for Till. So maybe he's just switching things up a bit. I mean, obviously the run that he had with Misfits was good, but Luke Rockhold was a big name for him to have on his resume. The other two fights weren't, and I mean, Luke Rockhold was a shell of himself as a professional athlete at that point anyway. So again, you would say that he hasn't had too many big fight draws, I suppose, that are really like even fights on paper, which you can tell that Till wants. He has that mantra where he's a very violent guy, the way he talks and the way he acts and the way that he's always calling for all the best fights and wants to be in the most violent challenges. You see that with him all the time, and obviously now he's living up to that, moving over to BKFC again. Another challenge for him, a new combat sport for him to learn as well. It just, again, like I say, will be interesting to see how he transitions, because it's difficult for anybody to transition over to BKFC, because it is such a different sport to the other combat sports, because you're just getting hit so much harder, and you also have to deal with the fact that you're having to throw, and it probably would, well, most definitely will hurt more when you're throwing as well. So there's so much more of an injury risk and everything like that going into it. But if you can deal with that and you can still come out on top, then again, credit to you. But I would say the fights in general are more 50-50 through just the risk of any powerful punch coming out of nowhere from either fighter. No fighter, I would say, is a non-powerful puncher when it comes to bare knuckle. So again, it's just going to be interesting to see how Till transitions, because he's been known as a powerful puncher in general from coming in from boxing now and getting knockouts, which he's had with Misfits. But of course, he hasn't taken any bare knuckle punches. But it will be interesting to see if this power has carried. I'm sure it will. Will he be a little bit more hesitant to throw in the risk of getting his knuckles hurt himself? Possibly. I doubt it, but possibly. But somebody like Chalmers has had that more time to transition in bare knuckle and has had that more time to adjust, just it being hit in general, throwing punches more. Like I say, that bare knuckle is just something completely different. Obviously, last time out, Darren Till made easy work of Luke Rockhold, completely, brutally destroyed him. And I mean, since coming up in weight, Darren Till has looked very destructive. Again, the power has really come through well. And again, it's, I'm sure, probably going to be a fight in which won't end in a decision. I would expect this one, or at least if it does, it'll be an absolute slugfest and a very entertaining one. It is quite random, Chalmers' trajectory as a fighter to where he is now, saying he started on reality TV with Geordie Shaw, and still I think does that a bit. And he was with Bellator as well. He had an alright record with Bellator, but again, nothing really too crazy. Kind of Dylan Dennis type vibes without the shit talking, and with an added reality TV thing, which is, like I say, really built up his Instagram following and things like that a lot more. And then, of course, out of nowhere, he got his exhibition fight with Floyd Mayweather. This was around the time in which Mayweather just fought Deji, and it was just a weird time. The event didn't sell very well. He was game. I mean, technically, he went all the rounds and drew with Floyd Mayweather, which, I mean, basically no fighter can technically say that they've done. So that was, to an extent, impressive. And again, he was getting outschooled to be fair, but he did look like he was up for it and tough. Mayweather probably could have turned up the gears at any time and probably could have got him out of there, but he didn't. So again, credit to Chalmers for going all the rounds in that one, and I'm hoping that he got good money off of that. But again, you never really know with Mayweather paying his opponents and things like that. But then he got a chance with influencer boxing, in which he lost twice. He lost once to Idris Virgo, which was probably one of the out of the two the most noticeable name. Again, that wasn't really the best of performances from Chalmers. But then since coming into BKFC, he got a chance with them and he's looked good. I mean, he's won his last two fights via stoppage. Last time out, he fought former Love Island guy in Jack Fincham, and he was quite destructive in that fight. You would definitely expect the level to be higher with Darren Till compared to Jack Fincham, but again, that was a real good stoppage. You would probably say it is the best he has looked in his career, and obviously, fighters like Mike Perry maybe didn't look the best in their MMA careers and their boxing fights, like when he fought Jake Paul. Obviously, we ignore the recent Mike Perry Nate Diaz fight, but then you look into him fighting with BKFC and they thrive. So again, BKFC, like I mentioned, is just such a different sport. Will MMA fighter who's actually done very well in Darren Till be able to transition and have the same amount of success? I mean, we've seen the likes of Eddie Alvarez come over to BKFC and just not had the same level of success. But then we've also seen somebody like Andrei Arlovsky, who has achieved a lot in MMA, come over and then had even more success. So again, you never really know what's going to happen with these guys. I don't feel like you can judge the success elsewhere all too much coming into BKFC. To speak about both fighters skill wise individually, I mean, it's difficult to speak about, obviously how Till's going to come over to BKFC, but, I'm referencing mainly from what we've seen from his boxing skill, not really talking too much about, his MMA days, mainly focusing on his kind of boxing because the skill and the rules are quite similar between boxing and bare knuckles. So again, that's probably the best reference point you get with Darren Till. Positives, he's not afraid to commit to his punches. Neither of these guys are. So again, that's definitely going to make it entertaining. But he's also probably the more confident out of the two to lead the fight and to be the aggressor in the fight. Whereas I think Chalmers is probably more comfortable actually trying to counter. He throws his overhand very well. It's a good technique behind it. There's a real snap behind it, and he can throw it from quite far away and can get over your guard when he's throwing it as well. And again, that's impressive. He can punch through you with a lot of his punches. Again, Luke Rockhold learnt that the hard way. He comes in off his jab quite a lot. Again, not the most, sometimes it actually is quite a powerful jab, but when he is following off of it, then there's not too much behind it then. Chalmers comes off his jab, but he's using it as a rangefinder more, Chalmers, and it's not actually doing too much in general, so it's not actually landing all too much, whereas Tills is definitely landing more. He can walk you onto punches on the back foot. He was doing that well to Darren Stewart. I mean, Darren Stewart was there for him to do that too. Maybe he might struggle a little bit more if Chalmers is being that bit more disciplined whilst Till is on the back foot, but typically he can actually catch you coming in. He's got power in his distant punches. A lot of fighters lose a bit of power when they're throwing the more rangier punches, whereas I would say Till doesn't. He still carries power, even like say if he's throwing from afar. And I would say he's always a threat, but so is Chalmers as well. And again, I would say he's probably the more aggressive fighter out of the two and the more front foot keen fighter out of the two. Negatives about him, he does square up in close quite a lot. He can force the stoppage a bit more. He seemed to do that against Darren Stewart when he couldn't get him out. And then that kind of led to him having not a downfall in the fight, but just getting caught a lot more, and then just resorting to stay on the ropes way too long, and then just did start to look a lot more tired. He's can be a bit of a predictable fighter a little bit as well. You can kind of expect the overhand to come a bit more. Maybe Chalmers might be preparing for that a bit. He may overlook Chalmers here. I feel like he definitely overlooked Stewart to an extent, so he definitely could. His head's on the line quite a bit. There's times in which you'll duck under and things like that, but it's not really something in which he's doing all too much. He drops his hands when he's throwing, which again, Chalmers, if he's as accurate and as good of a counterpuncher in which he looked against Fincham, he might be able to capitalise upon that. He doesn't really go to the body all too much again against Darren Stewart. The body was working for him, but it wasn't going to cause the visible knockout damage, in which I'm sure he probably wanted, so he just wasn't doing it enough, even though, like I say, when he was using it, it looked good. He can start too fast, which definitely could go in a good way or a bad way. It seems like if you do start quite quickly, you can actually often have success in BKFC, but again, if you can get the storm weathered from Chalmers, he might start to tire and then leave more gaps. I don't think in general he respects his opponents enough. Like I mentioned, he does tire, and if he can't back you up, then I just don't feel like he makes the necessary adjustments to be able to, like I say, continually have the same level of success without getting caught with a lot of shots himself. And he is quite a big target to get landed on again, especially if he does start to tire. Chalmers, as a fighter, he's not afraid to commit to his punches either. He brings his punches back well when he has his hands higher and more of a natural, I would say, BKFC guard. Again, we haven't seen if Darren Till is going to develop that a bit more, but again, in that way, it looks nice. He's got pretty fast hands, to be fair. He doesn't really rush in for the most part, which again, a lot of BKFC fighters do, and I would say Darren Till does a bit more. He's got strong counters with his planted feet and quite a strong base when he is throwing as well. Again, landing a strong counter straight away on Fincham, which dropped him early. He's quite composed, but he still puts on a decent level of pressure. He's still going to be kind of walking you down and keeping a good enough kind of distance. He uses his jab to find the range, like I say. It's not the most, he's not really doing too much with the jab, it's still there to find his range. And he is pretty accurate at a mid-range as well. Negatives about him, he doesn't throw in combinations as much. Till can kind of start to throw in pairs a bit, but he does start to mix in combinations a bit more, I would say. He's less comfortable when he is throwing more on the offense, when he is trying to push the pace a bit more and actually throw a bit more and not just be that counter puncher. He does, like I say, look a little bit uncomfortable, and it doesn't look like there's quite as much of a clean snap in his punches. His chin goes up when trading, which obviously is not really something you want to be seeing. He's flat-footed. He can duck quite down low when he is getting in close as well, which could lead on to an uppercut in which Till is, happy to throw. Doesn't really use his jab to actually land all too much. He can step in and square up. Again, like I mentioned, Darren Till does that same kind of thing, and he can start to load up as well. Of course, if you have success as a counter puncher, you can then start to load up to try and find more of the same kind of shot. And if the gaps aren't there available, then again, he might not have the same level of success. I will be interested to see how the reach works out in this fight, because I don't know the actual reach and height difference between the two of them, but I think it might be quite significant, but into Darren Till's favour, which will definitely be interesting. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think Darren Till's going to win via TKO in round 2. There could be a surprise later on into the fight with Aaron Chalmers getting a win, and don't be too surprised if that does happen, because it could happen. But I will say that I think the range of Darren Till and the way that he'll fling himself in early, which will be something in which Aaron Chalmers just won't be able to time well enough and won't be comfortable enough to be able to deal with. And if Darren Till keeps to follow up upon that, then Chalmers will become again a bit uncomfortable and probably will just start to trade. And then if he lands a shot, then he could land a big shot on Till. But I think if he's starting to trade, Till will be the more comfortable on doing that. And again, if he can settle into taking punches at bare-knuckle with no gloves on, then I think he is going to win, like I say, via TKO in round 2. And it will be a big stoppage for him to get in his first BKFC fight. And I'll be very excited to see it live, and of course, getting any interviews in which I can from anybody on the card after or in the presser beforehand as well. But then we can go on to fight next. Like I say, it's difficult for him to get matchups. Because, like I say, he's in that kind of no man's land, or who wants him kind of club, really, who's willing to take that risk. Mike Perry will be probably willing to take that risk, so possibly that could happen. But if Perry's now fighting with Most Valuable Promotions and they've got another route for him, then they might want to do that. But they also might invite Darren Till to fight with that Most Valuable Promotions MMA side of things. I don't know. Obviously, there's a pre-fight BKFC deal for Darren Till to deal with first, so we will have to wait and see. If not, Lorenzo Hunt, again, to get Darren Till a BKFC world title would be exciting as well. If not, then I have no idea. Maybe some, other MMA fighter could come over, or some other Misfits fighter could come over. Again, I don't really know. It could be a while where we don't see Darren Till fight, or he could come back against just a random opponent. We will, of course, have to wait and see, but it is difficult to match make Darren Till at the moment. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.